This is the very first event of the Nancy Lieberman Back to Life Center. And I have to tell you, I feel a little emotional because this is in many ways like a dream come true. I've worked in this field for over 30 years, and I've seen a lot of people become injured, and after their injury, sort of think that life is over. Many people have told me, if this is the way I knew it was going to be, I wish I wouldn't have survived. And I've heard that so many times throughout the years that I have felt something needed to be done about that. So I met a woman in 2008 who had just become a quadriplegic. Her name is Nancy Lieberman, in a skiing accident. And she literally is the most determined woman I had ever known. No limitation was going to stop her. She went back to work as a mergers and acquisitions lawyer. She traveled the world. She raised a son with special needs. And she just wouldn't accept that life could be any less. She passed away in 2023, and when she did, I went to her family and I said, listen, I want to create a center that captures her spirit and could help hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions of people believe that hope and possibility are possible after spinal cord injury. So the center itself, I mean, the family said yes, we want to help you, we want to support you. And due to the generosity of her husband, Mark Ellman, and the rest of the Lieberman family, we have the Nancy Lieberman Back to Life Center. So there will be many services that we're going to be unrolling in 2026, but this is the very, very first. They're called NancyTalks. They're like TED-style talks by and for people with disabilities. And the whole goal is to restore hope, restore possibility in a way that you're not hearing it from someone like myself. Not that you don't believe me, but I'm not in your position. So I think it's very important people see and hear from people who are experiencing what they're experiencing, to see that life after spinal cord injury isn't only possible, but believe it or not, like many, many people have shared with me, in many ways it could become even better. So today we have someone like incredibly special. His name is Jeff Williams. I have a long bio, but now I'm going off script here. I feel like you guys have waited long enough. And I just want to tell you a little bit about, like, for me, why he's here. I met him, like, it was a coincidence. I just happened to be at an adaptive fashion show. And I sat down, and he pulled up next to me, and we started talking. And in 2 minutes, we were talking about forgiveness and whether forgiveness is possible. So without any other time to wait, here's Jeff.
Thank you so much for the introduction. And can we get another round of applause for Nancy for making this possible? And I would also like a round of applause for all my fellow family members that's in these wheelchairs, because life is definitely a challenge when we get in these chairs. So we can have a round of applause for all of them as well. Thank you so much. My life started in Harlem when my mother moved from a little town called the Hosky, North Carolina. We moved to Harlem on 149th Street between 7th and 8th. And it was back in the 80s that I remember most of my life there, where that was like during a crack era. So it was like what most people consider the ghetto, what most people consider like a rough neighborhood. And a lot of the people that y'all probably watch on America Most Wanted grew up in those neighborhoods. They were selling drugs there. Those were like the role models for that neighborhood, and the people that we saw every day on our way to school and things like that. And my mother felt like, you know, I want to get a better life for you. So she moved us to the Bronx, to a section of the Bronx called High Bridge, where I went to Sacred Heart School. And she put me in a Catholic school. And at first I'm thinking, like, I don't really want to go to a Catholic school because I had to wear a uniform, I had to wear a blazer. And, you know, me and my brother, we deliberately tried to fail the entry exam, and we ended up passing it. So, you know, my mother's whole thing was, you know, Jeff, I want the best for you. I want y'all to move to a neighborhood where, you know, you can go to a good school, get a good education, you know, all the aspirations and dreams any parent want for their kids. And I'm thinking, you know, okay, this is great. And within a couple of months, you know, we ended up going to the school, and I remember this day that's etched in my mind forever. It was June 25th, 1982. It was the last day of school at Sacred Heart. And we was getting out for the summer, and I had all these great plans for the summer. And one of my friends that didn't go to the school, he came around the school and he was like, he had some bikes, and he wanted me and my brother to go back to his house and ride these bikes. That particular day, my mother told me, and she kept telling me, you know, come straight home, because she had a delivery for some furniture, and she wanted me to come to the house to get the furniture. And even though on my way to my friend's house, it kept like that little spirit on your shoulder kept saying, what did your mother tell you to do? And I'm like, any other kid, 13 years old, like, I'm gonna do what I wanna do. I'm not going home. I'll go later. So I get to my friend's house, and we going to get the bikes, and he come out the room, and he's like, Jeff, you want something to eat? And I was like, no, I'm okay. We sitting there, me and my brother, we talking to him. So he goes in the room, come out, and he has like a gun in his hand, and I'm thinking like, you know, he like, you know, look at this gun. So my brother's like, put the gun up, you know, don't play with that gun. And so he's still playing with the gun, and so I'm like telling my brother, don't worry about it, you know, the gun probably ain't real. So he hands me the gun. I said, let me hold it. He hands me the gun. When I feel the weight of the gun, I realize this gun is real. Like, I feel the metal, I see the gun, is the heaviness of the gun. But me being a kid growing up in Harlem and thinking about these gangsters I was around and these movies I used to watch, and it was just like this fascination with this gun. And while I'm holding the gun, I'm feeling like I got power. I'm feeling like, you know, I'm untouchable. I'm feeling like some notorious, you know, cartel gangster or something. And I'm just trying to figure out like, wow, you know, I got this gun in my hand. Like, I never really played with a gun before. So, and I guess living in the city, you never really around guns like that. So I hand the gun back to him, and he starts playing with the gun and pointing the gun. And my brother still from the start, my brother keeps saying, you know, Jeff, stop playing with that gun, telling my friend, stop playing with the gun with him. You know, people get shot like that. So my friend is ignoring my brother. He points the gun at me and pulls the trigger. When he pulls the trigger, I see a ball of fire coming at my head, so I grab my head. When I grabbed my head, the bullet went underneath my arm. But I was sitting on the couch. I fell back on the couch, and I just felt real weird, but my whole body numbed up. So I kept thinking like, wow, you know, like what's going on? And I was trying to figure out, then my legs went numb. So it was almost like when you go to sleep on your arm and it just felt like rubber. And then you go to move it and nothing happens. So I kept hitting my legs, and I was like, you know, I looked at him, I said, yo, you shot me. He was like, he had dropped the gun, because when the gun went off, it scared him. He dropped the gun, and he was like, Jeff, stop playing, stop playing. Then I'm thinking, like, maybe the cops gonna come, and I wanted to get out the house so we wouldn't get charged for the gun, get in trouble for the gun. And I went to get up, and I just couldn't move, and I'm like, start hitting my legs again. Then I'm looking around for blood, and I'm thinking, like, watching on TV when people get shot and they falling and they screaming like, you know, and making these noises. I'm like, why none of this is happening if this bullet hit me? And I'm still looking for the blood, the point of entry. And I just realized I can't move, but now I'm starting to lose my breath, and I couldn't breathe. So I told him, I said, look, I can't breathe, get me out of here. So he ran over, picked me up off the couch. We was on like a 5th floor walk-up apartment in Highbridge in the Bronx on 165th Street and Nelson Avenue. So we on the 5th floor, he's carrying me down the steps, and my brother's behind us. And I guess after a while I started getting heavy, so it's like was a struggle. We struggling out to the street. So we get out to the street, and I stop a cab. When we pull up to the cab, he won't let me get in the car because he's carrying me. So he's like, you know, what's wrong? Why is he carrying you? I said, I broke my leg, because I'm thinking fast, like if I tell him I got shot, he might not let me get in his cab. So I said, I broke my leg. He let me get in the cab. So I remember the cab pulling up to Lincoln Hospital in the Bronx. So I'm thinking like, why don't I just go home? I'm thinking all type of stuff is going through my head. And I'm thinking like, am I dying? Like I can't breathe. I'm sipping for air. And what was happening, I was bleeding internally, so both of my lungs start filling up with blood. So while I'm in the cab, he's like, Jeff, you know, don't tell. And growing up in the Bronx, growing up in Harlem, you know, they got this street code that you can't snitch, you can't tell, stuff like that. So even at that young age of 13, I'm saying like, that's just something I can't do, so I'm not gonna tell on him. So I told him, look, I'm not gonna tell, but at the moment I'm more worried about I can't breathe, so I pass out. So he hit me like, Jeff, no, wake up. So I come back, I'm going in and out of conscious. So when I get to the hospital door, they go for them to bring the stretchers out, and I'm sitting there in the cab. So I remember they pulled me out the cab, put me on the stretcher, and I just passed out right at the door. And when I woke up again, it was like all these lights over my face. I was trying to figure out where I was at, but I was inside the operating room. They had cut a hole. My side was burning. So I'm trying to feel like, why my side burning so bad? So when I looked, I had it looked like a water hose about that thick was sitting in my side, pumping the blood out my lungs. And I'm sitting there like trying to figure out, then I had, like I couldn't move my arm. They had strapped my arm up so they could put the tubes and stuff in. Then there was tubes everywhere. I had the oxygen mask, and I'm laying there just like trying to really collect myself, like where I'm at. Then I hear my mother. I see her walk by the room, and then I just close my eyes because I really didn't even want to see her. I didn't want to face her at the time. And I see my mother, and she's like, somebody shot him, because I guess she saw the bullet hole, and then she comes in the room and she's like, what happened? Like, who shot him? So the detective comes in and he's telling my mother, I think he came in the hospital with these two guys. I think one of them did it, because I asked them what happened. So two of us said I was outside and somebody was shooting and I was like an innocent bystander. But one of them said I was inside the building. So the detective said the story's not matching. So he tell my mother, I think one of them did it. My mother's like, they couldn't have did it. That's his friend and that's his brother. So then my mother goes to my brother and say, look, I don't care about this snitching and all this stories y'all dealing with in the streets. Like, who shot Jeff? What happened? So he point to my friend. And then my mother looked at him and was like, like, wow. So she goes tell the detective, look, he did it. And she comes back to the room with me. And she's just like, more or less like, what happened, whatever. I just closed my eyes. I didn't really want to talk to her. I just closed my eyes and let her deal with that. So then the detective took my brother and my friend to the precinct to go talk to them. And then I just remember, after that operation, they put me in a room, and I kept asking my mother, like, where my brother was at, and what happened. She told me that he went with the detectives. So eventually my brother came back, and, me and him was talking, and he was like, he just kept saying, I told you don't play with that gun. And now I'm laying in the hospital, so it's like days went by, weeks went by, months went by, and I'm still asking that same question, like, when am I gonna walk again? And at first, I really wasn't worried about it. I didn't even think about it, because I felt like the bullet, it had touched my spine. But I kept believing that once they did the operation and took the bullet out, that everything was gonna be all right. And because my lungs was collapsed and I was in such a bad state, the doctors kept telling my family, like, don't tell him, what's going on. Just keep telling him everything is gonna be okay. So I'm like, days are going by and I'm just starting to lose hope. Then it's like 3 months done went by and I'm still sitting there and I can't move. I'm using the bathroom on myself. I'm urinating on myself. I'm like, I can't feed myself. It's like, I just felt like at that moment, I was just like buried alive. So I'm thinking to myself, like, how do I live like this? How do I go on? What is tomorrow gonna be like, And, I'm just constantly just playing back my whole life. And I'm thinking, like, I'm only 13 years old. I ain't even get to drive. I ain't get to do this. I ain't really even had a good relationship, even though I had a girlfriend at the time. I just still was like, I ain't have no kids. It's like I never been married. It was like everything that you want in life, you just wondering, like, all of these dreams, all this stuff is gone. And maybe like a month before that, I had just won a basketball championship, and I'm sitting there looking at pictures where, I was with my teammates holding trophies, and now I'm laying here and I can't even move. All I can do is look at the ceiling. And I remember I'm trying to figure out, like, now I had to go get another operation. I had maybe 10, 15 different operations. So now I'm going to get another operation, and I come out the operating room. And when I come out the operating room, they got us sitting in recovery, and it's like 5 or 6 stretchers next to me. And I remember this guy laying next to me, and tears was running out my eyes, and he said, you know, why you crying? And when he asked me the question, I'm thinking to myself, like, I can't walk, I'm paralyzed, I don't know what's going on, I don't even know if I'm gonna ever sit up again. Like, what kind of question are you asking me? And he's saying, you know, so he asked me again, because I didn't even answer him. And he said, you know, why you crying? So I said, because I can't walk. And then he said, can you see your legs? And when he said that to me, I'm thinking, of course I could see my legs. Like, what kind of question is that? So he snatched the sheet off of him, and both his legs was amputated. He got electrocuted from, he was playing on a train track on the Metro North, and the train, the track or something electrocuted him, and he lost both his legs. And when he said that to me, it was like that whole day, the rest of that night, I'm laying in the bed crying, and I'm thinking like, wow, you know, and I kept playing it over in my head, like, can you see your legs? And I'm thinking to myself, you know, I want to walk, I want to sit up again, but I got my legs. So it gave me like a little bit of hope, a little bit of understanding that, you know, yeah, things are bad, but like his situation is even worse than mine. So I'm thinking, oh man, that's crazy. So now I'm on a pediatric ward, and I'm seeing somebody with spina bifida, they spine growing out their back, they land on their stomach. And I'm seeing all these kids, and I'm thinking like, every day somebody's dying on this ward. Then a baby fell out the window and had a body cast. So I kept seeing the preacher would go in their rooms and like read them their last rites. So one day he asked, could he come and pray with me? And I told my mother and the doctors, I was like, no, I don't want him to come in here. And they couldn't understand, like, Jeff, like, you know, he's just gonna pray for you. And I'm saying, every time in my mind, I'm saying every time he leave the room, that person dies. So I'm starting to think that I'm dying there because I still couldn't breathe. So I'm thinking, I'm like, I don't want to see him. And I just refused to visit. I wouldn't let him come in there. So then I'm sitting there one day, and they have moved me from Lincoln Hospital down to NYU to rehab. So I'm going down there, and then I'm starting to sit up a little bit. Like, I kept passing out every time I sit up. Then eventually my mother would put the bed up a little bit every day, and then I was able to sit up. So the doctor comes in and tell my mother, look, you know, here's some pamphlets to put him in a nursing home. And I'm thinking to myself, like, a nursing home? Like, I don't want to go to no nursing home. So I'm thinking, like, I done watched my mother sit here 4 or 5 months, and she probably tired of being here. So I'm looking at her. She handed the pamphlet back to the doctor. So when the doctor went out the room, she said, Jeff, listen, everybody gave up on you. So I need you to help me help you. I'm gonna need you to just get up, act like this wheelchair's a Rolls Royce, and just let's pull through. I'm thinking about that all night. And at this point, I still don't know that I'm not gonna be able to walk. So one day, my brother comes back in the room. I tell my brother, I said, look, I just need to know the truth. I need to know what's really going on here. So my brother says, you know, I don't really, like, you don't even want to know what that doctor said. So I'm like, no, I need to know. So my brother said, look, they said you got 1% chance to walk again. So basically, you ain't walking no more. And he, like, from that day on, like, he couldn't even look at me. Like, he was so hurt. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I couldn't wait for all of them to leave so I could just really cry the way I wanted to. And when they left, I probably cried from maybe that August to September. Like, every day I just cried, every day. And it was like, just to put it in perspective, it was just like everything in me was broken. Like, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know my body. I was broken, you know. So my brother, you know, he started coming to the hospital, but it was like he would come visit me, but he couldn't look at me, you know. And then I hadn't really seen myself because they wouldn't give me no mirrors or not like that because I had all the tubes in me. So I finally, like, look, I want to see myself. I look in the mirror, I probably like 90 pounds. I lost so much weight. You know, I just looked like a skeleton laying in the bed. And I'm just laying there like, how did I go from this to this? Then I was crying so much till my mother said, look, when you wake up tomorrow, you still gonna be in a wheelchair. Like, we gotta stop crying. We gotta get focused, you know? So this little girl, her name was Melissa, she would come in my room every morning. She was 7 years old. And I'd be crying, and she said, Jeff, when you think you got it bad, somebody else got it worse. And when she said that to me, and I would start thinking back to the guy who lost his legs, and I was like, you know, this means so much to me where, you know, when you think you got it bad, somebody else got it worse. So every morning she would come check on me to see if I was crying. And when she rolled in the room, I would like wipe my face, cheer up, because I didn't want her to see me crying anymore. So she said to me, Jeff, remember what I told you? When you think you got it bad, somebody else got it worse. So I don't want to see you crying. I said, okay. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm 13, this little girl is 7. Like, how is she mentoring me? How is she telling me how to be strong? So one day she didn't come in the room, and I'm thinking like, you know, where's Melissa at? So I tell a nurse, I'm like, can you go get Melissa? You know, she ain't come see me today. So the nurse just had this grim look on her face. She said, you know, she had to go to surgery. So I'm like, you know, the night shift comes, I still ain't see her. So I'm saying, you know, where's Melissa at? So the night nurse tells me, she was like, oh, she didn't make it out of surgery this morning. So I was like, huh? Like, I couldn't even like wrap my head around that. So I'm like, I'm having so much death and so much, you know, disappointment around me. So I said, I'm thinking to myself, you know, Melissa's never coming back to see me. And like, who's gonna motivate me? Who's gonna encourage me now? So I start feeling like I gotta be that person. I gotta be that voice for Melissa. Melissa has to live through me. And this is why, like, when I wrote my book, I did a whole chapter on, it's chapter 4 in that book, My Feet Off the Ground, and I dedicated that chapter to Melissa. And everywhere I go speak, everywhere I go talk, I always discuss this experience I had with Melissa, because I feel like she was that angel that came in my life to change my life. So now I'm thinking, I can't cry no more. I gotta be strong. I gotta do this for me and Melissa. So after that day, I started going to therapy. I'm in therapy. I see somebody with some leg braces. They going down the parallel bars. So I tell my mother, I say, you know what? I want to try that. So they telling me, you know, because I got hit so high, I'm like T7, so I got paralyzed from like my chest down. So they was like, well, you can't do that. So my mother, when I came back, my mother came to see me that night. She said, did you do the braces? I said, they said I can't do that. She said, who told you that? I said, all of the doctors, they told me I can't do that. She said, let me tell you something. Don't ever let nobody tell you what you can't do. Give me that doctor, find out who that doctor is, and I'll get them to get you some braces, and you go show that doctor that you can go down the bars. I said, all right. So I got her the information. So she went, spoke to the hospital and said, I want him to try that. So when they gave me the braces, it was like one of the hardest things that I ever tried to do, but I was able to do it because I refused to give up. And the fact that the doctors didn't think I could do it and they told me I can't do it, I was just so determined to get it done that I ended up going down. I like walked down the bars, parallel bars. That probably was the first time I was up again in maybe 8 months. So now they was like, okay, we're gonna release you from the hospital. So I went home one weekend. They was like, we're gonna try to send you home for the weekend. I haven't been out the hospital in over 7, 8 months. They sent an ambulance, I come outside, and the light bothered my eyes so much I couldn't open my eyes because I had been shut up in this hospital so long. And I remember my first weekend I came home and I had stopped crying. I was feeling a lot better. And I went to get ready for bed. And my mother told me, go take a bath, you know, get ready for bed. And they had taught me how to like do a lot of things for myself at the hospital. So when I went to go to the bathroom, my wheelchair wouldn't fit through the door. And I'm thinking, like, you know, in the hospital, everything was accessible. So I rolled back to my room, sat on the bed, slid on the floor, and crawled to the bathroom. when I lift myself up into the tub and I cut the water on, when the water started running, I started crying because I just felt like so defeated. I felt like I started feeling that negative feeling again where, like, this used to be so easy, like how I'm crawling to the bathroom. And, tears just started running out my eyes, and I'm thinking, like, so many things that you take for granted every day, so many things like just getting up in the morning, getting dressed, all of those things change for me. So now I come back, I crawl back out the bathroom, go back to the room, get dressed. So my mother comes by the room and she like, I'm really proud of you. You did all that by yourself. She said, listen, don't let nobody do nothing for you. Everything you do, I want you to learn how to do it yourself. So I'm thinking, okay. So now I'm thinking, all right, I got to go back to school. So I remember they sent one of those yellow bus with the elevator with the lift on it. They sent the bus to my house that morning. So I'm going back to my class. I get back to the school, ain't no elevators, I'm on like the third floor. All the kids was happy to see me. They came down, 4 of them picked up the chair. They would carry me up to my class every day. So I'm thinking like, wow, this is nice that these kids, like I'm wondering what's school gonna be like? Like, is this gonna be a situation where I'm getting back to school, everybody teasing me, or is this gonna be a situation where they're gonna embrace this chair? Like, how they gonna deal with this? So I remember when the bus pulled up and when you get on that bus and the elevator push you like out and then it comes down. So that night when I got home, I'm saying, nobody else came to school like this. I don't want to go to school like this. I'm not used to going to school like this. I don't want to be on a bus. I don't want nothing special. I want everything to be normal. So I tell my mother, I said, look, I can't go to school like this. I want to go to school like everybody else. But I was the only kid in that school in a wheelchair. So one of my classmates, they lived in my neighborhood. So they told my mother, I spoke to one of my classmates. He was like, why you got to ride that yellow bus? I'll take you to school. So I was like, I told my mother to let him bring me to school. So I started walking with all the other kids to school. They would push me to school. And then I just felt better. I felt like myself again. So then my friend calls me one night and he's like, we going to this party. I was like, I'm not going to no party. Not in no wheelchair. I'm not going to no party. So he takes me to the party, and when I get to the party, everybody's like, oh, what happened? I started telling them I got shot, and they was acting like it was something special, like you got shot, like wow. So it was everything I thought was totally different when I got to the party. I'm thinking people ain't gonna really talk to me, people not gonna really embrace this situation. So all the girls, all my friends, everybody's like, oh, everybody just gathered around. They wanted to hear this story on how I got shot. So it started feeling like I was this celebrity in a wheelchair, and I'm thinking like, wow, this is different. So I leave, everybody gave me their phone number. I'm home calling people. I'm up all night telling people what happened to me. So then my brother's like, why all these people calling you? And I'm saying, I don't know, like they excited that I got shot and I survived it and I'm in a wheelchair. I don't even know what's going on here. So then my friend called me, he want to go roller skating. I'm like, how am I go roller skating in a wheelchair? So they end up, it was this roller skating rink up in the Bronx, Skate Key. They ended up taking me roller skating. And my friends, Lamont, Bonnie, it was like 4 or 5 of my friends, they ended up taking me roller skating. And it was like I started doing things that was like out of the normal situation. So when I get to the roller skating rink, they all go get their skates and they bring me a pair. They like, yo, put your skates on. I'm like, y'all going too far with this situation. So I put the skates on. He like, Jeff, get out the chair, sit on the bench. I get out the chair, I sit on the bench. Nobody know I'm in a wheelchair. So everybody's talking to me, everybody acting regular. People coming to me like, yo, come on, let's go skate. I'm like, nah, I'm tired. I done did about 4 laps. I can't go skate. So I get back in my chair, and when I get back in the chair, everybody's like, wait up, that's the guy that, they confused. So I still got the skates on, so they put the whole wheelchair on the floor, and he like, come on, we gonna skate. They skate me around. And it was like one of those nights that just brought my life back, where I just felt normal, I felt included, I felt all these things I hear now about inclusion, just feeling like you belong, and it just was putting me back in that space. And now I'm thinking like, because people think, I start realizing like society really think you can't do all these things in a wheelchair. So now I go to high school. I end up graduating from my junior high school. I go to Cardinal Hayes in the Bronx. Then I graduated from Cardinal Hayes and I ended up going to John Jay College. So I graduated from John Jay College. Then I went to Adelphi University, graduated from Adelphi University, and I ended up getting a job at Colgate-Palmolive. So when I got to Colgate-Palmolive, everywhere I'm going, I'm like the only person in a wheelchair. So now I'm starting to feel like, you know what? I'm like this role model for people in wheelchairs. I gotta make everything I do great so other people can stop looking at the rest of us like we can't do nothing. So I'm like, I have all these opportunities to be in these different places. So now I'm at work and it's snowing one day. So I decide I'm gonna go to work. I go to work in a blizzard. When I get there, ain't nobody there. So the person, my supervisor, she comes by my office and she's like, Jeff, what you doing here? I said, I had to work today. She said, yeah, but it's snowing outside. She said, everybody called in. I said, that's why I came. I said, because I hear no so much and trying to find a job is so hard that I just didn't want to do nothing wrong to make them not accept me there. So I just felt like if I got this opportunity, I'm just gonna go run wild with it. I'm not gonna let nothing stop me. I wanna be better than every employee that's in this building. And then I got promoted. I started in a mailroom. I ended up working at their company store, and everybody's like, why you wanna work in a company store? Because I learned that the more I network, the more people I get to meet. So I figured if I work in the store, I'm gonna meet all the lawyers, I'm gonna meet all the people in the legal department where I wanted to be. So eventually, a job opening came up. I went and applied for it, and I ended up getting a job in the legal department. So I was in the legal department. I've been there 30 years now, so I'm really proud of that. April just made 30 years. And when I look back at all them years and some of the people that work with me, and they like, Jeff, you really inspire us. So it got to the point where they would call me in the morning when it snowed to see if I was coming to work before they called in. And it just felt good that I was setting a tone for something like that. Then I developed like a employee resource group at my job, for people with disabilities. It's called Colgate's Ability Network for any employees. Because what I started to see, a lot of people didn't really want to disclose they had a disability if it was like a hidden disability or something like that. They didn't really want to disclose the fact that they had a disability. But I was trying to explain to them, if we don't identify ourselves as who we are, we can't get the resources we need. We can't get stand-up desks. We can't get accessible doors. We can't get, accessible bathrooms, things like that. And I was fortunate enough to break a lot of these doors down where they ended up build a bathroom for me that was accessible. They got power doors in the building and things like that. So those things were starting to happen for me as well. And I just started living life on my own terms. I started realizing, one of the first things, being in a wheelchair and being paralyzed is the fact that it's like a mental side and a physical side. And a lot of times, even when you can deal with the physical side, it's hard to deal with the mental side. And even though people would see me in a wheelchair and I had a visible disability, I feel like everybody has a disability because there's something in everybody's life that challenges them. There are things in your life that you may not talk about to your coworkers, to your friends, but I think everybody has trauma, whether it's from childhood, whether it's from something that develops along the way, whether you lose a parent, you lose a kid. It's something in your life that's gonna give you some type of trauma. I feel like everybody has a story. And then I decided that I wanted to tell my story because I wanted to change the way people look at us. I wanted to change the way people think about us. I wanted to change the fact that everything people said I couldn't do, I already did. I wanted to let people know that if you challenge me, whatever that challenge may be, I'm gonna definitely show you that I can make it happen. Then I just started doing extreme things. I bought my first apartment. I was 17 years old, and it was like 5 steps to the apartment. And I remember the real estate agent saying to my mother, like, why, I could have got you an apartment that was accessible. And my mother said, no, I want him to have this apartment because it got the steps that'll challenge him every day. Then I learned how to go up and down the steps with my wheelchair because I had to do it every morning to come out my apartment. And then that's really how I started getting into real estate. Then I ended up getting my real estate license. Then I was a real estate agent for about 10, 15 years. And I remember one day I had to show an apartment in the Bronx. And the client came and I was sitting in the lobby and she told the doorman, I'm waiting for the agent to come show me the apartment. And the doorman laughed and he was like, he right here. So she was like, Jeff? I was like, yeah, that's me. And so I ended up selling her the apartment. They did a story on it in the New York Times. So I was setting prices in the Bronx and over by Yankee Stadium. It was like the South Bronx. It was up and coming. It was bad neighborhoods. And I did a sale in the Bronx that was $100,000 over asking price. So I ended up having the highest sale in the Bronx. And I was probably one of the first real estate agents in a wheelchair who hit those sales. So that was something that I was really proud of. And I just felt like my life had a different purpose now. I had a different reason for living. And, people would ask me, all the time, like, how do you feel about this person that shot you? And it was like a real awkward situation because the same person that put me in the chair saved my life, because if he didn't take me to the hospital, I would have never made it. And when you get shot, you got about 10 to 15 minutes to get to some medical attention. And I constantly played that over and over in my head, like, it was an accident, he didn't mean to do it. And now it was me confronting, how do you forgive somebody that put you in a wheelchair? And I'm sure looking around this room, there are people in this room that haven't forgiven family members, haven't forgiven people in their lives that have done way less than that. Somebody owe you money, somebody did something that you didn't like, and you can't forgive them, and you still can't forgive them. And I chose to forgive the person who shot me. We do Thanksgiving. It wasn't like I just forgave him. My family forgave him. He sits at our family Thanksgiving dinner, and I never really looked back at it. I never really held it against him. I just kind of told him, go live your life. I'm going to live my life. And, that was one of the things, like, out of being in a wheelchair, that's one of the things I'm most proud of, because I think we always seek revenge. We always look at, how can I get this person back? And I think forgiveness is not just giving up, letting somebody get away with something, but it's lifting that burden off of you so you can move forward, so you can live your life. And I think a lot of trauma and a lot of the things that people deal with throughout their life and things that keep people depressed is the fact that they won't forgive. They won't let things go, and sometimes even people who are disabled or end up in wheelchairs, whether it's like drunk driving, car accidents, things that's self-inflicted, I think they have a hard time forgiving themselves, so it's hard for them to move on. So one of the things I want to do in this message to all of y'all is, if there's somebody that you feel like you haven't forgiven, use today and this story and this message to go home and forgive that person. Let them deal with whatever's bothering you that you can't forgive them for, and lift that off your wings, because you can't fly with that burden on your wings. And the thing for me, like now, I've started a scholarship at the Helen Nursing School on 120th Street and Madison Avenue. And one of the reasons I did that, I wanted to do something for nurses, because I felt like nurses aren't just nurses. They're like that person that I used to talk to late at night in the hospital. They the first impact, because even when they coming in the room to care for you, all the questions, the family's there and the doctor's not around, they asking the nurse, well, how is this, how is that? And I just feel like the nurses who really did take time to care for me when I couldn't care for myself, who would change me, who would change my bed, like, they volunteer to do these things, so I just really feel like my heart goes out to them, so I set up the scholarship. So from my book sales, I set up the scholarship to help nurses, and it was just something dear to my heart. I also have a mentorship program for the youth in Harlem, so I do a lot of mentoring, because I know growing up in the South Bronx, growing up in Brooklyn, growing up in Harlem, kids face a lot of challenges, and it's so easy to say yes to trouble and so hard to say no to what's right. So I've just found that, the fact that what I've been through, I don't ever, like I tell people, I don't want you to ever have to go through what I've been through. You know what I'm saying? I want you to hear my story, but I don't want you to be my story. It's something that I always tell the youth. And the reason why I talk to them is because a lot of them don't have role models. A lot of them, we come from broken homes. We don't have both our parents in the household. And, I just want to do whatever I can to prevent this from happening to somebody else. I also do mentoring at Rikers Island. I go visit people who are incarcerated, and I'm in like a high population, so I'm dealing with a lot of people who committed murders and things like that. And I remember the first time I went there, I'm thinking like, a lot of people like, well, they kill people. Why would you even want to go help them? And going in, I felt like I'm that only closure for those families who was victims, who was, the results of some of the crimes they committed. And that family will never get to talk to them face to face. So I don't just go in there and talk to them and try to inspire and motivate them. One of the things that I've enacted when I'm there is like I would go in and I say to them, today we're gonna talk about the word accountability. Tell me what that means to you, because I wanna be the person to hold them accountable for these things that they have done. Because the first step to recovery and rehabilitation is to hold yourself accountable. So that's something else that, I've been working on. And then to get into some of the things that are like exciting for me, recently I've flown an airplane, and when I'm flying and I'm up in the air and I'm looking down on the earth, the first thing I think about is that doctor that handed my mother those pamphlets to put me in a nursing home. And it just means so much to me that I never gave up. And what we were talking about in the beginning of the speech was, giving people hope, giving people a reason to live. And I've found so many reasons to live, and early on, where a lot of people that I meet now, that I go visit, that's recently been put in wheelchairs, and they say to me, Jeff, I want to die. I don't want to do this. And I always ask them, when you was laying on the ground or you was in that ambulance, you begged for your life. God gave it back to you. So what you gonna do with it? And that's how we transition that mindset from I don't want to live or I can't deal with this to how can I live? How can I be a better me? And I think one of the things you have to do is leave that person you used to be where it's at and become that great person you are now. And one thing I also learned with this whole journey is to never say what I can't do, to always ask myself, how can I do it? And the best way I can put this disability is like a math problem. So I always ask people, what's your math? Is it 2 + 2 = 4 or 3 + 1 = 4? But give me your math and give me your solution. When you find your solution, you'll solve your problem. And before I go, right, I can't walk, but I never miss a step.
Well, that part on forgiveness gets me every time. There's this quote I use a lot. It says, we don't forgive others because they deserve it. We forgive others because we deserve peace. And I think you expressed that like beautifully. It also made me think a little bit about the power of community in your story. Like, there were parts where like there were these key people in your life, Melissa. There was that person that came to you and said, I'll drive you to school. And because of that person, you ended up going not only to high school, but like college, and it put you on another path. It was your friends that said, no, you're coming to the party. We don't care, like that you don't want to go. We're taking you. It was the people that embraced you. It was all these people along the way, and it makes me really conscious of like the actions I take around people as well. So I think community is a really powerful part of your message and the power of it. And also, like, one more thing before I open it up to questions, it's about, not giving up on people. And I have felt that way my whole life in this work, that you never give up on someone. That's a lot about what this center's about, not giving up and giving people hope and possibility. So I can't thank you enough for being our first speaker. So now give them applause. So I would love it if people have questions for Jeff. But is there anything? All right, Hector.
No, just when you say you went skating, how fast you went? Just had to ask. It was on my
That's good.
mind.
I like
I was
it.
flying around that skating rink.
I got a question.
Yes.
I heard you say something about did you fly the plane or you was just on it?
I flew the plane.
You a pilot now?
I'm not a pilot. I don't have my license, but I fly planes. Yes.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, that's dope. That's dope.
They actually have hand controls on the plane also.
Ooh.
Yeah. It's called Freedom Wings. Freedom Wings. I'll give y'all the information so y'all can do it. Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions for Jeff?
And I'm taking any questions, so whatever's on your heart, let it go. I mean, what's good with the questions is the fact that to get real answers, we need real questions. So don't hold back, feel anything. I'm not offended. There's nothing you can ask me that I won't answer.
I have a question.
Yes.
Relationships, because you had mentioned in the beginning, like you were worried you wouldn't have children, you were worried you wouldn't have relationships. I'm just curious, how that went.
Well, at the time that I had the accident, I had a girlfriend who stood by me the whole 9 months. I was in the hospital. She never left my side. It just got to a point where I asked her to go live her life because I felt like I wasn't sure if I was going to ever come out of that situation, and I didn't want to be a burden in her life, even though she accepted my situation. I just felt like it was the right thing to do to let her. I mean, like sitting there watching seasons change in a window at a hospital, I just felt like it's 90 degrees outside. You're 15 years old. I wanted her to go live her life, but to this day we still friends. Everybody that ever pushed my chair, we still friends. And she just meant a lot to me because all I needed to know was that she was there for me. And when she showed me that, I was happy to know that. I eventually had a son, and my son is 27 years old. And then I ended up getting married. So relationship-wise, life has been great,
Yeah, that's great.
Can you speak to any biases or myths that you had about disability prior to your accident that now living through it you feel differently about or that you feel strongly about, countering?
I love that question. That question means a lot to me because I like to be honest about this situation. I didn't know people was in wheelchairs till I got in one. The same way a lot of people walk around every day and you're so busy that it's not that you don't care, it's just not important until it hit home. So, like, to your question, looking back, I wish I was one of those able-bodied people that did more, because it wasn't like if somebody in a wheelchair asked me, can you help me across the street, I would have did that. But the fact that I didn't zero in on not just people in wheelchairs, but whatever that disability is, whatever that challenge is why now I have dedicated my life to making a difference in the world and in society in those ways, and to bring that awareness, bring that exposure, because I'm one of them people that was guilty of not doing as much as I could have done to help other people. So that's definitely something that I feel is important.
Do you ever give motivational speaking talks, maybe tour around the country? You've got your book to market to.
Yes, definitely. I've spoken. I also have a mentoring program for veterans. So I do what they call America's Corporate Partners. So I mentor them. I've spoken in North Carolina, Virginia, Texas. So right now, because I do a lot of motivational speaking, they fly me out to different places to speak. I mean, if there's anywhere that y'all know that I need to be, I will be there. I also do speaking, like if somebody randomly, I get phone calls, people may see me on social media, they'll reach out to me, tell me somebody in their family recently became disabled, somebody in their family got shot, can I talk to them? And I'm so dedicated to this, I'll tell them I'll show up. And I roll in that hospital room and they'll tell me, Jeff, they're not really talking, they really depressed. And they'll see a smile on their kid's face when I leave that room. And they always ask me, what did you say to him that made him do that? I said, I look like him. I understand him. You're walking out that room telling him he's gonna be okay. I'm rolling out the room. I rolled in the way he came in, and I'm rolling out the way he can see the hope and the future, and he sees somebody that can be just as successful even in this wheelchair.
That's beautiful.
I wanted to know, do you do stuff like financial courses or something like that for people with disabilities? Because sometimes, you know what I mean, for people with disabilities, you know, dealing with Social Security and stuff like that, it's almost like they try to handicap you, no pun intended. Like they don't want you to do great. Like they just want you to stick to wherever they got you at that level. And if you try to go any further above it, they start trying to, you know, give you difficulties. So, like, do you help people out in those type of situations?
Yes, definitely. I recently started what they call real estate. So it's a real estate company that I opened for people in wheelchairs just to help them transition from getting a check every month to having their own independence. I want to see people in wheelchairs be homeowners, things like that. One of the biggest challenges when I first started working was the fact that I had to come off Medicaid, get medical coverage. So when I started working, the biggest challenge is finding a job that pays you enough to give. I mean, these wheelchairs cost $15,000 to $25,000, and medical catheters and all type of medical supplies different people need depending on their injuries. But I was fortunate enough where I was able to get a job that I made enough money where I could give up the check, give up the medical, and I still transition to medical coverage at my job that covers all of those things. So that's something that I was speaking to them earlier about, just, you know, having more conversations around that, seminars on letting people know you can transition from that check into like a corporate job or something like that. And during COVID, they created this work from home situation. So a lot of times with the work from home, I think that's a better option, you know, for people in wheelchairs to get a job where they home and they can still tend to some of their medical needs and things like that.
My question is this. If you was given the opportunity to go back to the day you were shot, with the knowledge of knowing what's going to happen, will you choose to take this path knowing what's going to happen, or you avoid the situation so you don't have to be paralyzed? That's my question.
I'm glad you asked that question, and you might be confused with my answer. If I'm honest with myself, as much as I want to walk, I would not change my life for one reason. I know for a fact I wouldn't touch the lives that I've touched outside this wheelchair. And I would be selfish if I just changed my life and not change the world the way I've done it.
Decision, but knowing who you are as a person, that
Exactly.
decision came easy.
When
That's
I have
what's up.
somebody walking or somebody in a wheelchair come and tell me, Jeff, you gave me a reason to live. When I go to a college and I speak and 10 kids come to me and say, I was gonna commit suicide. I didn't commit suicide after I heard your story. That's what inspired me to write the book. That's what inspires me to do the things that I do. That's what landed me in Rikers Island. Every walk of life, I wanna be there. I wanna be that person, that Melissa that came to me as that angel. I wanna be that angel, whether I come walking or I come in this wheelchair. If I can change your life, I don't care how I come. I just wanna do that.
Do you remember what you felt the first time you were offered the chair? Like what your relationship was like to the chair when someone said, this is what you're going to need to get around? And then do you have any advice for people going through a tough time with that transition or viewing it, you know, in a really negative way in the beginning?
Yes. I think when somebody say, you know, you in a wheelchair, and I guess my mind thinks totally different, so my answers might be a little awkward, but my wheelchair is like when somebody gets a Grammy and they hand them that Grammy. It's the journey of their music career. My wheelchair is the journey, my scars. I have scars all over my body. When I look at my scars and people you could get plastic surgery, you don't want to change none of that. I say these scars, when I see these scars, those are cuts that saved my life. When I'm in my wheelchair is a trophy for the journey and the things that I've accomplished. So for me, the wheelchair is a part of who I am. So, I mean, I've done parties and on the top of the flyer it says Jeff in a wheelchair. And people would question me like, why would you put Jeff in a wheelchair? I said, because that's who I am. You know, what I have a problem with is teaching people language. Like somebody asked me, what's a word that people use to describe you, and what word would you use instead? And the word was handicap. I'm far from handicapped. I do more than people walking, so I'm offended when somebody calls me handicapped. But I don't get offended when people do it. I feel like that's my point, and that's a message I want to give to everybody in a wheelchair or have a disability. When somebody call you handicapped, that's your time to teach them what the right word is. And like in Dubai, they say person of determination. That fits me perfectly. So I don't get offended because, like I said earlier, I didn't know what was right. I didn't know the right way to address somebody. And when you're not around people that's in these situations, it's not that you're being ignorant, not that you're being rude or offensive. You just don't know what to say to them. And I like these conversations, and I'm glad everybody came out because this is where you learn what's right and what's wrong and how to address people and make them not feel uncomfortable. And it ain't that people, like I get out my car and people be standing there staring, and I'm like, I'm on a motorcycle. So they see a wheelchair and a motorcycle don't go together. So I tell people not always staring at you because you're in a wheelchair. They cannot believe that you're driving a motorcycle. But I come out the store and my bike is sitting there, you know, and I'm rolling to the bike. The whole sidewalk stops because they like, where's he going? And then when I jump in the bike and I pick the chair up and put it in beside me and pull off, it's like, wow. You know, I got cameras, everything rolling. So, I mean, like I tell people, if people gonna stare at you, give them something to look at. So, you know, those are learning moments for me. I call it the wheelchair moment, you know, so it's special for me, you know. And it also leaves people understanding that you thought I couldn't ride the bike, but I'm gonna show you. And even with my motorcycle, everything that I've done is like a story to it. I went to buy the bike, they wouldn't sell me the bike. And the bike, you had to shift gears, and I wanted the bike automatic. Polaris makes that three-wheel motorcycle, the Slingshot, and they wouldn't do it. I found somebody in Wisconsin that would do the bike for me, so I had the bike built so I could ride it, just because they told me no, that I couldn't have the bike. So once you get to know me, one thing you'll learn about me, if you tell me no, when you see me again, I'll probably be doing that. But those are just adventures I do, like water skiing. I've done that where they pulled me with the boat 50 miles an hour, so it's like adaptive water ski. I play hockey, rock climbing. I mean, like, one other interesting story, one morning I was coming out my building. I pushed the elevator wasn't working. So this guy walks out his house, he walks right, he stops. I said, he said, elevator broke? I said, yeah. He don't ask me if I'm okay. If I need help, he walked right past me, go down the steps. So I was like, wow, he could at least ask me if I was okay. Next person come out their house, this other guy, he comes out, he do the exact same thing. It bothered me so much, I went down the steps, cause you could go down one flight, catch the even elevator. So I went down the steps with the chair, got on the even elevator and met him in the lobby. When he got to the lobby and saw me, he was confused because I live on 27th floor. So he's like, wait a minute. But those are those moments where I'm not gonna let somebody tell me. That was when my mother pops in my head, you know, don't ask nobody for help, do it yourself. Like a lot of times you just gotta look in the mirror and ask yourself, what can I do to help me? And stop always waiting on somebody else to make your life complete, waiting on somebody to say it's okay for you to do this. Even if you look at some of your dreams and hopes and aspirations, it's always that person that tell you can't do it. But how do we discover all these things? I mean, and even like with technology now, I believe everybody in here is going to end up walking at some point. And I tell people, you know, keep exercising, keep your body in shape. I remember the first time in Mount Sinai I did the rewalk program where they put that robotic suit on you, and it was maybe 100 people, and your ankles had to flex. You know, I exercise my feet. I have electric bikes at home that pedal my legs, stuff like that. So I keep my body in shape, and I just stay healthy, you know, because part of it is not just being in a wheelchair. That's like just the major part of it, but then it's still, you have to eat right. You have to, you know, set up a special diet, certain things you can't eat, and just kind of figure out how can I make my life better as I am. life doesn't stop because you're in a wheelchair. You know, we do everything everybody else doing. We just sit down and do it. You know, even having my son, that was like another one of those moments in my life where I was fortunate enough to have him naturally. And I remember going to the hospital and they showed me a sonogram, and I'm like, who was that for? Like, and the doctor's like, you're gonna be a father. I'm like, a father? Like, how you be a father in a wheelchair? You know, and all of these things were like learning curves for me where I get, you know, I drop my son off at school and I'm wondering like, what is his day gonna be like? Like, are the kids gonna feel some way that his father's in a wheelchair? And he's like, Dad, all my friends wish you was their father. I'm like, really? He like, you know, and then it was crazy because I would go pick him up from school. He brings some of his friends, they get in a car and they like, I thought you said your father was in a wheelchair. They're in the back seat whispering. And he's like, talk to him. Y'all could talk to him. He's like everybody else. And then their kids would say, how you drive this car? You know, so I showed them how I drive the car, and then they just fascinated with it, you know. So all of them, I take them on trips. They come to the house. And, you know, like, even when I did the rewalk and I brought my son here, I was like, I'm going to surprise him. I want him to see me walking. And when we left, he was like, I know how bad you want to walk, but I'll be honest, I like you are. I like you in a wheelchair. Like, wow. So, I mean, those moments are special to me because when you can be who you are and people accept you the way you are, that's more important than anything.
Just one more thing. There are books. There are books right there. Jeff's book. Do you want to say anything about your book? Is it up for sale?
Yeah, the book's $20. And like I said before, some of the proceeds go to my nursing scholarship that I do every year at Helen Floyd Nursing School. And before y'all go, I want to thank all of y'all for coming. The fact that y'all in this room just shows me that you care, you know, and it's so easy not to care. You know what I mean? It really means a lot to me. I mean, the people that's in the wheelchairs who came out to support me, that means everything to me because that means they hear me, they see me, I understand what they're going through, they understand where we've been through. And it's never about me, it's always about all of us, you know. So whenever you see anybody in a wheelchair, that's who I represent. I don't care who they are, whether one of y'all in this room, and you don't have to be in a wheelchair. That's the important part of who I am. You could be in a dark place walking. I want you to still reach out to me. I want to be that phone call, that helpline, that hotline, because sometimes it just takes one person to talk you out of doing something that's not really good for you, you know? So I have my cards. I'm gonna give a card to everybody in this room. Y'all can email, y'all can call me. I'm touchable, I'm reachable. Even my book is self-published. No Amazon, no Barnes and Nobles, because I want to know everybody that reads that book because it's a motivational, inspirational book. I know that book changes people's lives, and I want them to have somebody to mentor them. I also design my own sneakers. Each one of my sneakers have like a quote in them. Like, be somebody nobody thought you could be is one of the quotes that's in the sneaker. The reason why I made the sneakers is because I wanted something that related to walking. And it's like people always say, you know, can I walk in your shoes? Walk in your own shoes, but I want to inspire you when you get up in the morning and put them on with that quote.
Well, thank you so much. The best first Nancy Talk ever.
One, two, three, four.